All right, there, men, are you ready for part 2 of planning your Western hunt affordably? This is part 2. You just stumbled across it. You're welcome to listen, but you may want to go back and listen to part 1, laying the groundwork. On this episode, I hope to tackle some more specific locations. Blue-collar Western hunt. I'm not talking about a, $30,000 guided elk hunt or $50,000 guided Dall sheep hunt where you take a charter plane and a float plane and all that stuff. That stuff is great. And if you have the money and the capital for that, tip of the hat to you. I am glad you're blessed with that. But I know not many are, especially in this economy. Also, a lot of people save up their whole life to go out and hunt out west. And there's nothing wrong with that either. Enjoy the fruits of your labor, as it says in Ecclesiastes. Nothing is better for a man that he should eat and drink and enjoy. Nothing is better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God. So if you're a blue-collar working man in the 20s, 30s, 40s, or any other age, and you're trying to do it more affordably, plan a Western hunt. That's what we're going to talk about today. So welcome. Welcome to a podcast where we talk about this type of thing the right way with Almighty God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. On that, I'm going to put in a bio. Actually, I'll do a fresh one on this as it's a little bit different. First and foremost, I'm a Christian, a servant of God, and a follower of Jesus Christ. That's number one in everything that I do in the podcast. Is no different. I have a lot of military, law enforcement, private security contracting, combat type experience. But also, more germane to today's topic, I grew up hunting and shooting at a very early age as a poor boy in the South. Hunting, and if I'm being honest, poaching to put meat on the table. And I grew up in the Southeast United States, pretty poor and rural. I have spent the latter part of my life on purpose in the West because I love the West. I love the Wild West. I love one of the last free places in the world where I can be a man. Hunt all kinds of species in vast open lands, not somebody's 40 acres that they own, but on millions of acres of wild country that we all own as part of our inheritance as Americans. Let's say as men in general. Every time I go back east of the Mississippi, no offense to people that live there, I just want to get out of there as quick as I can. I have chosen on purpose and left good paying jobs and family to be in what I consider the Wild West. Many people dream of hunting out west. Again, I joined the Marine Corps and went out west when I joined when I was 17. I got out west, I was 18 or 19. I love the West, and I've hunted out west now for a long time, all over the West, in many different western states. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide. Trying to bring that experience to you today to have you plan your own Western hunt, a blue-collar way. Not, you just booked this, $30,000 elk hunt, and what you gotta have is this 1,000-yard rangefinder and this Gucci rifle and the hot new cartridge that's 150 feet per second faster than the one that's been around for 50 years, and you need this, you need that. I'm talking about for a blue-collar working man, common sense. Plan your own Western hunt. Because I see a lot of other advice that's a little bit too, if you got all the money in the world, throw it at the problem. But if you don't, you can still be a Western hunter. That's what we're going to tackle today. All right there, men. As promised, let's get into some more specifics. Now, this first one I'm going to recommend is very much desert Southwest. And caveat, if you are a good Christian man, and I hope you are, and you're not super tempted by vice, this could be a good affordable trip, especially if you don't have the time to drive. The one thing about this one is it's easy and usually affordable to fly in and out of because that city is built on tourism to get people in and out. And it can be kind of a money pit if you stay in the city. You might know which one I'm talking about. Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, just a quick geographical note. Las Vegas is right on the bottom corner. It's a very short drive to California and Arizona. So it's a good place to fly into, and it's a good place to hunt, believe it or not. Now it's going to be hot, even if you go in December. It might get really cold at night. Don't think that deserts are always hot. That's a rookie mistake. See the episode on Alpha Male Podcast on desert survival. If you're not accustomed to deserts, you probably want to listen to that one. But deserts can get cold, especially in the winter if that's when you're going, especially at night. There can be wild swings in temperature. It's not like the coastal climates of the north or southeast. Very dry, so water is very important that you have it and have extra of it, and then have tertiary supply of water. Water is important. Lack of water will get you killed in the desert. But it can be a beautiful, beautiful, rugged, sparse, wild desert landscape. I said in the first episode, think about what kind of geography and climate do you want? And if you want dry, hot, but rugged mountains in the west, this is a great place. You can fly into Vegas, which is kind of a bowl surrounded by mountains, rugged desert mountains, but beautiful, big rock mountains nonetheless. Very, very desolate. You can be in downtown Vegas and be out on open BLM land in 15 minutes. You can be in the middle of nowhere in an hour. So if that appeals to you, that desert, rugged Mojave, coyotes and rattlesnakes and jackrabbits, if that kind of thing appeals to you, this might be your deal. This one also is number one because unless they've changed it, now Fish and Game laws are on you to verify and check out, but unless it's changed since I lived in Nevada, you do not need a hunting license. You should maybe get one anyway, but you do not need a hunting license to hunt coyotes or jackrabbits in Nevada, and there is a year-long season, so it's easy to plan. Whenever you go, you can hunt jackrabbits and coyotes. So that's a good, easy hunt. If you're flying in, maybe you have a long weekend and you're going to stay out of Vegas, you can drive for an hour and there's lots of rental car places, easy, cheap flights. You can go and hunt coyotes and jackrabbits. There's plenty of open BLM land. Some places you might want to explore for your jackrabbit hunt. Pretty much anywhere around Vegas is going to be good jackrabbit and coyote hunting. But if you want some beautiful country that you can hunt in, you might check out Laval Canyon. Laval Canyon is a short trip from Vegas. It's beautiful, it's rugged, it's remote. There's pretty much one dirt road that goes through there, and if you're willing to hike off of that road, you'll likely see nobody. And it's mountains, it's beautiful, you might see some elk. You're likely to see some mule deer, even if you don't have tags. It's still beautiful, rugged country. And you're likely to see jackrabbits and coyote. You also may want to do a drive towards Jean, Nevada. There's some rugged mountains around there and mountain passes and a long, windy road that, again, if you're willing to get off that road, there's plenty of wild, rugged country. Don't get lost and die in the desert. There's a lot of it. Also, if you want to hunt with your AR, now I generally don't recommend that for deer and stuff like that, but if you're going on a coyote jackrabbit hunt and you want to get good with your AR and get off the flat square range and have wide open spaces, judging distance, judging wind, shooting at moving objects, this would also be a good time for that. And Nevada has pretty good gun laws. Some other notable things around there that aren't Vegas, you probably know about Vegas, but Hoover Dam, you might want to check that out if you want to hunt more on the Arizona side. Hoover Dam is a short drive and kind of worth seeing. Red Rock Canyon is beautiful. Now, I wouldn't go hunting in Red Rock Canyon. There's probably too many tourists there. But Red Rock Canyon is also beautiful if you want to see more of the beautiful Southwest desert type landscape. Also, if you're there at the right time, you might not think of it, but there is quite a bit of foraging you can do in the desert. Juniper berries, if you want to make tea, are quite good. Yucca fruit, if you're there at the right time of year, can be quite good. And yucca root for making soap. It's kind of a cool thing to do. Just some side things there. Not much fishing, but some cool things to do around there nonetheless. And make sure you look up at the night sky, because if you get away from the lights of Vegas out in the desert southwest of those clear skies, the stars will be beautiful. The next one, Yellowstone. Yellowstone and the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Now, Yellowstone National Park you cannot hunt in, but the greater Yellowstone ecosystem is vast. If you don't know your geography real quick, you have Montana, and underneath it you have Wyoming, and then to the west of Montana and Wyoming you have Idaho. Idaho is west of those, and the greater Yellowstone ecosystem and Yellowstone National Park itself actually is in all three states. So this gives you a vast opportunity to see that ecosystem and to see Yellowstone and pick one of the states you want to hunt in. Now, if you're in it for big game, antelope, mule deer, elk, and you're willing to go outside the general rifle season, you may, and you can check again Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, and see if there are either leftover tags or just over-the-counter tags for these species, especially, again, if you're willing to hunt muzzleloader, archery, and you're not set on a rifle tag. I don't know that any of them have over-the-counter rifle tags for like elk or antelope. Here's the deal. You might look at wolf and black bear. You should be able to get, depending on time of year and what state you want to hunt, wolf and bear tags in this greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So you may want to look at that. If you're coming closer to late fall into the winter, it can be brutally cold. So keep that in mind if you're from Florida, Georgia, and you don't know how to deal with, negative, 20, 30, 40 degrees and lots of snow. You may want to plan an earlier hunt. However, the later you push it back, talking about visiting Yellowstone, the less tourists you're going to have to deal with. If you don't mind the tourists when you go to Yellowstone National Park, then you may go a little bit earlier in the year for better weather. Obviously, for this trip, you're going to want to visit Yellowstone. If you're an American, or if you're a human and you haven't been to Yellowstone and you get the opportunity, I highly encourage you to go to Yellowstone. Geysers and buffalo and beautiful rainbow springs, grizzly bear and wolf and black bear and elk herds. It's just a beautiful place to see, and I think you should take a day or two off of your hunting trip and visit Yellowstone. Also, in that area, the fishing can be quite good, especially if you're into fly fishing, if you're into, you really want to catch a cutthroat trout, you really want to catch this thing or that thing, western fishing species, fly fishing. If you're into that, is a great area for it, that greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Also, things you might want to do around there, you may want to visit some hot springs. Don't go jumping into the pools at the park. You might die. But there are some decent hot springs, as you might imagine, with all that geothermal activity. So if you want to do a hard hike and hunt for a day or two and then go hang out in some hot springs, that's a good opportunity as well. If you want a city yuppie day, if you're bringing people that want souvenirs and stuff like that, you may consider Jackson Hole. If you want more of an upscale Western experience, more of a drugstore rhinestone cowboy kind of thing, you want to check that out. Jackson Hole, kind of the bougie touristy area around there. Since we're on Great Western National Parks kind of thing, the Grand Canyon. Now, most people, the vast, vast majority, of people that go to the Grand Canyon go to the South Rim. That's where you think of like the touristy and a bunch of Asians taking pictures with cameras. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but probably not hunting around there. Now we're talking Arizona, for those that don't know. Arizona. If you go to the North Rim, the Kaibab, that is huntable land, and it's quite beautiful. It's not what you think of when you think of Arizona. Think a big ponderosa pine country. It's still the Grand Canyon. You get beautiful, beautiful views if you're willing to hike a little bit of the canyon. You're probably not just pulling off the road and seeing beautiful views. If you're willing to park and camp for free on BLM land and do, 30, 40 minutes of hiking for a beautiful view, it can be a breathtakingly spectacular view. And if you want to hunt with a breathtaking, spectacular view, there you go. If you're into hard hiking, this is a great place. If you want to hike down to the canyon, down to the Colorado, and then back up to the rim while hunting, the North Rim may be for you. You might consider hunting squirrel. You might consider hunting quail. Obviously still coyote, so that's another species that you can look at. Arizona, not the best place for big game tags. I don't think you're getting anything over the counter. But again, quail, you're good to go there. If you want to do some quail hunting and hopefully some quail eating over a fire, camped out, seeing some beautiful landscape and some breathtaking views and some hard hiking, consider the Kaibab and the North Rim. Beautiful southwestern landscape, quite different from Vegas. If you're going to drive, that's one thing, but although it's very different from Vegas, you can fly into Las Vegas and it's not that far a drive to the North Rim. If you're doing this adventure, you may also consider, depending on how long your trip is, going to the area around Sedona and Prescott, Arizona. If you want kind of that southwestern cowboy, red cliffs, strikingly beautiful landscape, one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen naturally in my life is Sedona. Sedona is beautiful and gorgeous. It does have a Whole Foods, as you might imagine. It's a little bit liberal, but liberal Arizona is still quite a bit better than most places. And if you get right outside the city of Sedona, places like Oak Creek, Wet Beaver Creek, and over to Prescott and down to Cottonwood, those are gorgeous. If you want a city day, hang out in Sedona. Check out Tlaquepaque. It's really cool how they did kind of a city mixed into the natural landscape and didn't make it overwhelming. It's gorgeous. Obviously, there's a ton of great hiking around Sedona. It's like world renowned for that. Just outside of there, you can stay for free on your partially owned, if you're American, BLM land. There's lots of good camping around there. And the dove hunting can be really good. So you might want to consider, if you're doing this, hunting quail around the North Rim of the Grand Canyon and the Kaibab, and then doing some dove hunting around the Sedona, Cottonwood, Prescott area. Again, there can be some really good dove hunting around there. And also, again, coyote hunting. And if you go just south of there, you'll start getting into a completely different landscape, which is the Sonoran Desert. If you want to see those giant saguaro cacti, very, very western landscape, you just have to go a little bit further south from Sedona, from Cottonwood, and you will see that landscape completely change. It's almost crazy how fast it changes. But remember, out west, you can be dealing with very, very different climates and geography and elevation in what's seemingly a short amount of time. Other notable things you might want to see around there, Jerome is a restored ghost town. If you like the Cowboy West and the ghost town kind of vibe, you may check out Jerome. It's really cool. As far as culturally, again, Sedona, Tlaquepaque. There's an old cavalry station in or around Cottonwood. I don't know if it's in Cottonwood proper, but somewhere around there, there's an old cavalry station, which is pretty cool. you can check that out as well. The next one, if you don't care about getting infringed, if you're not bringing any kind of modern gun, meaning 1950s technology and newer, like an AR-15, which was designed in the 50s and adopted in the 60s. It's a classic by now. But a lot of states say that's not cool. That's not allowed here. You can't even own it, let alone hunt with it, blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm going to shock some people and recommend California. Again, if you don't care about, if you're going to hunt with a bolt action, you don't care about getting your gun rights stepped on because you are just numb to it because you live in many places in the Northeast or the upper Midwest, and you're just used to, taking the infringement. Govern me harder, please. If you can get away from that, or that doesn't bother you, and you don't have a philosophical objection to giving a state government that does that money, you may consider California. Yes, California. California is a giant state. Anywhere, and people think of the Bay Area as Northern California. The Bay Area, like San Francisco, is Central California. I would consider Redding like Northern California. There is a section of California north of, let's say, 3 or 4 hours north of the Bay Area that is bigger than most eastern states, period. And it's vast, and it's wild, and it's rugged, and it's beautiful. And it has some good hunting, believe it or not, even over the counter. Now, if you want an over the counter tag, unless you're willing to do archery, this may be not your place. But if you want to do some black bear hunting, this is some good black bear country filled with manzanita and berries, and you might not think of it, but rugged, wild Sierra Nevada mountains. Now, I am going to recommend for this area, and there's a lot of it. Again, this just little area of California is bigger than most eastern states. So I want you to wrap your head around that. But the biggest bear I've ever killed in my life was here in this part of California in the Thousand Lakes Wilderness. There's the Thousand Lakes Wilderness, there's the Ishi Wilderness, and there is the Three Rivers area. Most notably famous for the pretend creature of Bigfoot. If you're a squatchy, a squatchologist, a squalologist, if you like Bigfoot, you might look at the Three Rivers area. I think that's the area where that famous film and stuff took place. But if that's your thing, you might look at Three Rivers. But Three Rivers is some of the most beautiful country in the country, and it's very rugged and very remote. You're talking big mountain Sierra Nevada country. The Rockies get a lot of love, and they're beautiful, but the Sierra Nevadas are equally beautiful. If you want some good black bear country, and here's the thing, if you don't have dogs, like bear hunting dogs, and you don't have time to set up a bear baiting station, it kind of doesn't matter because that stuff's illegal in California anyway. So you might as well use it to your advantage because you'll be on equal footing. Now, people that live there are going to have, the area knowledge. But if you do some research as to this time of year, bear eating manzanita, which is Spanish for little apple, or they're eating blackberries in this area, if you do that kind of rudimentary research and you're a good tracker, you can do pretty well black bear hunting here. And there's a lot of rugged, open, wild country. And a lot of Californians don't hunt, period. And a lot of Californians don't hunt black bear. So if you want to do black bear, you can do it in a lot of the West. But kind of a hidden, unthought of gem is north. And I mean north, like Redding and that area up to the Oregon border. That is beautiful, rugged, wild country. Things to do around there, if you want to get out of the paradigm of what you think California is, go to the city of Redding. It's a really cool city as far as cities go. You also may check out Mount Shasta as kind of a cultural attraction. Bernie Falls. I've seen a lot of waterfalls. I've been blessed to see a lot of waterfalls. I've never seen any more beautiful than Bernie Falls. Bernie Falls is gorgeous. It's worth the trip. If you're within 3 or 4 hours drive of there, make the trip. It's a beautiful drive. and check out Bernie Falls. Maybe even camp out there. This area also, kind of dispel what you think about California, is pretty rugged Western cowboy country. Rodeos and cowboys and giant ranches. There is that. If you want to go a little bit farther east towards the Oregon border, you'll get into some pretty good coyote and prairie dog, ground squirrel hunting, if that's what you want. And if you want to go a little bit farther west and you've never seen the giant redwoods, this is it. Now, the giant sequoias are in central to southern California. Those are the biggest trees in the world. The giant redwoods are the tallest trees in the world, and they're around here. They're right around Crescent City, which is the very northern border towards Oregon. They are worth seeing, as is the Pacific coast, if you're hunting more on the western side of this area that I'm talking about. All right, since we're close anyway, we talked about that Oregon border. If you want to hop up, now, Portland is a crap hole. I'm sorry that you get what you ask for when you govern like that, in my opinion. But anywhere outside of Portland, especially the central Oregon to southern Oregon coast, is very, very sparsely populated. If you live on the East Coast, look at what your population density is for your state. I looked up Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania I think is one of the better, to me, eastern states. It has 283 people, 283.9, just from what I looked up, or 0.2 depending on the stats, but 280-something, 286.2. 280-something people per square mile. Oregon, by contrast, has, depending on the stats, 39 to 41. And the vast majority of those people live in and around Portland. If the government was not so oppressive in Oregon, I would probably be living right now on the Oregon coast, especially the Gold Beach area. But anywhere from Brookings to Gold Beach is breathtaking. If you want a coastal experience, a more aquatic experience, whales and sea lions and seals and starfish, and really a rugged coast, not like you're picturing most places on the East Coast. If you want to see the Oregon coast and a rainforest and a temperate climate where you don't have to worry about what the weather's going to be because it's going to be a temperate rainforest, it's pretty much going to be the same, you might look here. If you want really good fishing, you might look here. And if you want to plan something that's near and dear to my heart, a canoe hunt. Now, check your local laws as to whether you can hunt out of the canoe, but you can get into some pretty rugged remote country via a canoe in and around the mid-Oregon coast. The Rogue River, if it doesn't take your breath away, I don't know what to say. And here again, I'm going to say, if you want to do big game, black bear. It's good, dense black bear country. Unless they've changed it, over-the-counter black bear tags for non-resident. The fishing can be phenomenal, obviously. If you're big into fishing, you might want to plan it around when the salmon are running. If you're not into salmon fishing, that's really the only time to avoid. That's maybe the only time you'll run into quite a few people. People come from all over the country to fish for salmon in the Rogue River and some other rivers around there. There's plenty of open, free camping and open BLM land. A big chunk of that state is open country. So if you want to do a river canoe fishing / black bear hunting, see some Roosevelt elk even if you can't get a tag, you should check that out. Some cool things around there if you just want to drive up and down the coast, right? If you just want a beautiful road trip, just driving up and down the coast is gorgeous. If you want to check out Astoria for kind of a city day, it's a pretty small city. It's where they filmed the Goonies. It's beautiful. Also, you could get some good food there. As you might imagine, there's tons of good hiking and giant, giant trees. If you're accustomed to trees on the East Coast, just brace yourself for the magnitude and vastness of the forests. Ferns as tall as a man. Think about Star Wars with the whatever those teddy bear creatures were on that moon planet. I think that's where they filmed it. It's hard to wrap your mind around, and pictures don't do it justice. So if that appeals to you, that rainforest, the giant trees, the vast tracts of land, beautiful, clean water and rivers. Foraging also, things you can do around there. The foraging is really good. There's so many different kinds of berries. I don't know if you'll get sick, but you could walk around in the dark and pick blackberries. There's so many. There's also salmonberry and currants. There's all kinds of good foraging around there. So that's also an activity you can do if you like. That's also an activity you can do if you like the more rugged, wild things. And if you want a temperate climate, it's not going to be very hot and it's not going to be very cold. From the middle of summer to the middle of winter, it's a temperate climate. It's a temperate rainforest. By definition, temperate means it doesn't have wild swings in temperature. Now to go really far away, some 1,400 miles, as I pull it up on the map. Again, the West is big. Deadwood, South Dakota. If you're big into cowboy, gold rush history, if you just like, Wild Bill and Calamity Jane and old saloons, and that's part of what you're basing your hunt around and you want to see, Deadwood, South Dakota. Now, if you're driving there, you're going to see a lot of Great Plains country. The Black Hills are kind of unique. I believe they were named the Black Hills from what I've heard, if this is true, because they're so dense and forested they look black. This is some beautiful hiking country. Deadwood's a pretty small city, and everything around there is pretty wide open. When you think the Dakotas and you think hunting, you probably think pheasants. So, pheasant is a good thing to hunt around here. If you're driving to Deadwood, you're probably going to cover a lot of pheasant country. Now, if you're an archery hunter, South Dakota does, I believe, and again, check with Fish and Game because regulations change all the time, they do have over-the-counter archery tags. If you want to hunt mule deer, if that's one of your dreams, you're a big-time archery hunter, you might check it out. Also, pheasant country, again, beautiful pheasant country. Kind of when you think of the Dakotas, you think of pheasants. Also, just culturally, some of the nicest people you're probably ever going to meet are in the Dakotas area. Just really nice, friendly people. Whatever the small town is, stop for a workout on your road trip. Just really good people. If you want to think about culturally what America was like in yesteryear, like a throwback to the 50s, go to like a small town in the Dakotas. It's nice to see people acting proper, acting the way humans, I think, should interact with each other. So just culturally, if you care about that in a good kind of Christian, old school American environment, South Dakota is a really good place to find that. If you just want small town quintessential America, there's a lot of them across the country. But South Dakota is hard to beat for cultural things as far as that goes. Like old school American, small town, farm country. And we already talked about culturally. Deadwood is a really cool town. Sturgis is pretty close to Deadwood if you're into motorcycles. If you're looking for like a motorcycle trip, obviously Sturgis is on there. If you're a big Theodore Roosevelt fan, Theodore Roosevelt's ranch is in North Dakota, but that might be worth a trip as well. Okay, this last one I'm reluctant to actually talk about because it's one of my favorites. I don't think the podcast is so big that there's going to be a bunch of new people there because it is so remote. It's one of the reasons it's my favorite place to live in the country. And that is western Montana and even further west into northern Idaho. This is my favorite place in the country as far as a balance of wild, rugged country, culture, and freedom. If you love freedom and you love wild, you will love western Montana and northern Idaho. The Bitterroot Range of the Rocky Mountains is green and rugged and wild and free. What more ringing endorsement could I put on there? Conservative country if you get outside of Missoula. But the Lolo area, the Lolo Pass, if you're big into history, the Nez Perce War, one of the last great cowboy Indian showdowns in the West was the Nez Perce War. The Nez Perce Indians, you might like this area. It's also on the Lewis and Clark Trail. So if you like Lewis and Clark history, you will really like this area. There's a lot of stops and historical markers and monuments, more than I can mention here in this area. They went through this pass. There's only a few. This is the only real pass over the Rockies, over the Bitterroots in this area, and that's the Lolo Pass from Lolo, Montana, over to the Palouse country, which is beautiful rolling hills. Picture Ireland in America, in the northern part of Idaho. That's what the... Also, if you're a fan of Ice Age type mammals, which I like that era, that epoch, pretty big archaeologically around here. I don't think that's a lot of people, but as a side note. But those Palouse hills, if you want like lush rolling green hills, picture Ireland, but where you can have, normal modern guns, that's a beautiful area. If you want rugged wild mountains that are green and lush, if you want clear, beautiful water, literally the Clearwater River, if you want good fishing, if you want old school America, if you want rugged Wild West, good foraging, tons of feral apples, just apples all over the place, as well as blackberries. And if you've never had a thimbleberry, this is thimbleberry country. Thimbleberry is like the filet mignon of berry. If you're into foraging, you might check that out. Some cool things to do around there in the Lolo Pass are the Lolo Hot Springs. It's a place, talking about Lewis and Clark, it's a place that Lewis and Clark hung out and refreshed themselves in the hot springs. Lolo Hot Springs are cool because they're heated not by geothermal activity, but by uranium. Yes, uranium. From uranium deposits deep underground where radioactivity dispels heat, which boils water, which is how a nuclear reactor works. Don't worry, the water is clean. And you get to reap the benefits of that by hanging out in Lolo Hot Springs. If this place was back east, it would be swarming with people. But since it's in the rugged, remote Wild West and not near any major airports, it's not. It's a really cool place. If you were bringing your family, you might check out booking a place at the hot springs so they have stuff to do, and you can take a rest and hunt the surrounding area and fish the surrounding area. That Lolo Pass, it's right on the border of Montana, and if you keep going west, you get into Idaho. So you could look at tags in either state. Look at over-the-counter whitetail tags. This is whitetail and mule deer country. If you're going around the area, you have a chance to see all kinds of stuff. Not a bad area for upland game birds and fishing. Get a wolf tag, black bear tag. So that is an adventure in and of itself if you want to check out that Lolo area, the Lolo Pass of the Bitterroot Rocky Mountains. Anyway, I've given you some more specific things to think about if you want to plan your own affordable Western hunting, safari, excursion, whatever you want to call it. Consider what you want, which one of those appeals to you, or maybe you want something completely different that I didn't mention. That's fine. But I've spent a big chunk of my life living as a nomad. I've been blessed to travel and live in many of these states all over the West. And blessings are meant to be shared. Knowledge that's useful is meant to be shared. So hopefully you enjoyed this sharing of ideas and knowledge. If you consider that valuable and worth something, consider becoming a patron. Obviously, you can listen for free. But if you think this knowledge is valuable, maybe you want to help out and support the podcast. If you do, there should be a Patreon link in the show notes. Your tactical tip of the day: if you're coming out west and you're used to back east where, every 5 miles there's a Dollar Tree and every couple of miles there's a gas station, the West is not like that. I generally like everybody, my advice is to stay above a half a tank, but if you're out west, really stay above a half a tank and have a spare gas container. That's just good advice in general. But when you're out west and you're like, oh, I'm going here and I passed a gas station and, I'm at a third of a tank, surely there'll be a gas station by the time I get to where I'm going. Don't bet on that. This is not the East Coast. You could go hundreds of miles without seeing a store or a gas station. You should be more self-reliant, and that should be one of the things that appeals to you to going out west. Keep some spare water in your car, especially if we're talking the desert Southwest. There's plenty of clean water other places, but keep some water and keep that gas tank above half. Don't assume that you're going to be able to get more gas where you're going. A lot of these places where you're going, it may show a town on the map, but it's a town in name only. There will be no gas station there. So make sure you stay up on your gas. Your tactical verse of the day. You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show partiality nor take a bribe. For a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. You shall follow what is altogether just, that you may live and inherit the land which the Lord your God is giving you. My interjection here. Remember that all land, the whole earth, belongs to God. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Don't worship it, but enjoy it. It's a gift from God. With that, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.